Ladies, if you've ever found yourself feeling frustrated or distant from your husband as the years go by, you're not alone. In today's video, we're exploring the practical reasons why women may begin to feel this way as they age, and why it's more common than you might think. Stick around until the end for valuable insights on navigating these feelings, and don't forget to like, comment about your experiences, and subscribe to our channel for more relatable advice. As we grow older, there's a natural evolution in our emotional and physical needs. In our younger years, many of us focused on building families, careers, or personal goals. Our relationships were centered around shared experiences like raising children, working towards financial stability, and supporting each other through life's ups and downs. But as time passes, those external pressures start to ease, and our needs from the relationship shift. We start to recognize that we're not the same people we were decades ago. Our priorities and goals evolve, and that's when our expectations of our husbands begin to change. For instance, many of us in our 50s and 60s crave deeper emotional connections. We're no longer content with just going through the motions of daily life. We want to be heard, understood, and validated. We seek someone who can share in our deeper reflections and converse about the things that truly matter, our dreams, the purpose of life, and even our regrets. Unfortunately, many husbands don't anticipate this shift. They may still see us as the same women they married, focused on caregiving, managing the household, or supporting their needs. When our expectations change, there's often a gap between what we now desire and what they understand or are prepared to provide. This disconnect can feel isolating, even though we're still physically in the same space. We yearn for emotional intimacy, deep conversations, and to be seen as individuals, not just as partners or caregivers. What's frustrating is that we may not even be fully aware of this shift at first. We might just feel a sense of dissatisfaction, a longing for something more, without knowing exactly what it is. It's only upon reflection that we realize the person we're yearning for isn't just the man we married. He needs to evolve with us, to meet us on this new emotional plane. If that doesn't happen, resentment can quietly build. The burden of caregiving is one that many women take on as they age, whether it's caring for aging parents, spouses, or even friends and relatives. In fact, the statistics on this are staggering. Studies show that women, especially those over 50, are more likely to take on caregiving responsibilities than men. We often become the primary caregivers for our elderly parents, managing doctor appointments, medications, and day-to-day care. At the same time, many of us are also navigating our own health concerns and aging bodies. This double burden of caring for both others and ourselves can be overwhelming, and it often feels like we're carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders. But here's the catch. Many husbands don't fully understand the emotional toll caregiving takes. They may not grasp the constant exhaustion, the mental strain, or the frustration of not having enough time for ourselves. They might not realize how taxing it is to juggle our own needs with the needs of everyone else. This is where resentment begins to fester. You may find yourself silently seething as you handle everything, and your husband may not even notice or acknowledge the effort it takes. It's not about him not caring. It's often about him not being fully aware of the magnitude of the responsibilities you're carrying. He might assume that you're handling everything because you always have. But what he doesn't see is how that constant caregiving is draining you emotionally, mentally, and physically. It starts to feel like you're invisible, like no one sees the sacrifice, and worst of all, like no one is offering to share the load. As time goes on, the frustration grows. You may start to feel that your husband is no longer your partner in this journey, but rather another person to take care of. That feeling of being overwhelmed and unappreciated can create a distance between you, and resentment sets in. It's hard to feel affection for someone when you feel like they don't see or acknowledge your struggles. One of the most significant challenges in long-term relationships, especially as we age, is a breakdown in communication. We all know that early in a relationship, communication is exciting and constant. You talk about everything: the little details of your day, your dreams, your fears, your hopes. It feels like you're building something together, layer by layer. But over time, that communication starts to slip away as life gets busier, especially as we approach midlife and beyond. There's less time for those long, meaningful conversations. The focus shifts to tasks, responsibilities, and routines. We stop talking about our feelings, our desires, or our dreams for the future, and instead, we fall into a pattern of discussing practical matters, paying bills, running errands, making sure the kids are okay. But in the absence of those deeper emotional conversations, we start to feel disconnected. You might find yourself thinking, "I don't really talk to him anymore," or "We've lost our spark." But here's the thing: the loss of communication isn't just about talking less. It's about feeling heard and valued when we do speak. It's about having someone who listens, someone who engages with what we're saying, someone who gives us the space to share what's on our minds. Without that, we start to feel lonely, even when we're sitting right next to them. This breakdown in communication can lead to a slow, silent frustration. We may not know how to fix it, or even realize how bad it's gotten, until we suddenly feel a sense of emotional emptiness. Let's be real. Sometimes when women feel that emotional distance, they start to withdraw. The cycle continues. We stop sharing, they stop asking, and over time, the bond weakens. Eventually, we find ourselves resenting the lack of connection, and that emotional isolation turns into a deeper dissatisfaction with the relationship. As we get older, many of us experience shifts in our interests and lifestyles, which can create distance between us and our husbands. This is a natural part of life, but it can be difficult to navigate when our husbands don't seem to be on the same page. When we're younger, we often share common interests, whether it's activities, hobbies, or social circles. Over time, however, our interests can evolve as we go through different stages of life. Maybe you've started a new hobby like yoga or painting that brings you joy and fulfillment. Maybe you've developed a deeper interest in traveling, reading, or learning new skills. As these new passions take root, you may feel like your husband just doesn't get it. He might still want to watch the same TV shows he's always watched or remain stuck in the same routine he's been in for years. The difference in interests can be subtle at first. It might start with a few disagreements about how to spend free time, but over time, it can grow into something more significant. If your husband isn't interested in your new pursuits, or if he's resistant to change, it can make you feel isolated. You may even feel as though he's not supporting you in your personal growth. When he doesn't take the time to understand what excites you, or when he isn't willing to step outside his comfort zone to explore new things with you, the gap between you widens. This isn't about abandoning the things you once shared. It's about finding ways to grow individually while still being a couple. But if there's no effort to meet halfway or engage in each other's evolving interests, frustration builds. What once brought you together can slowly push you apart. Aging brings physical changes for both men and women. But for many women, the way our husbands respond to these changes can deeply impact how we feel about ourselves and our relationship. When we're young, we're used to being the object of attention, whether it's compliments on our appearance or admiration for how we take care of ourselves. But as the years go by, we can feel overlooked, especially when our husbands start to shift their attention elsewhere, or worse, become indifferent. One of the most common issues that arise with aging is the change in physical appearance. Our bodies change in ways we can't always control, and while it's natural, it can be a hard pill to swallow. We may notice more wrinkles, gray hair, or other signs of aging that weren't there before. What's tough is when our husbands stop noticing these changes, or worse, stop showing us affection and admiration altogether. Many women feel invisible when their husbands stop paying attention. Compliments become fewer, and physical affection often fades. It's not just about intimacy. It's the small things, the touch on the arm, the kiss on the cheek, the kind words when you look in the mirror. When these things disappear, it's easy to feel neglected. And let's be honest, when you start feeling overlooked in this way, it can create a sense of resentment. It's also worth mentioning that as women age, we sometimes lose the energy to take care of ourselves the way we did in our youth. Life becomes busier, whether it's with work, family, or caregiving, and self-care can take a back seat. If your husband isn't supporting or encouraging you to take time for yourself, it can lead to feelings of frustration. We all need affirmation, especially as we go through these changes. When that attention fades, it can start to feel like we've become invisible, and that hurts. The dreaded dad bod syndrome. Let's talk about it. While it's something many men joke about, it can be a serious issue in long-term relationships. You see, over time, many men let their physical health slip. They stop exercising, eat unhealthy foods, and start to gain weight. This dad bod phase can be a huge turnoff for many women, and it's not just about vanity. It's about respect, care, and shared effort. When we marry, we expect that we'll take care of each other, both physically and emotionally. But when your husband lets himself go physically, it can feel like a sign of neglect, not just for his own health, but for the health of your relationship. Many women feel frustrated by this shift. It's not about wanting him to look like he did in his 20s or 30s. It's about wanting him to continue showing the same level of self-respect that he once did. You might think, why should I have to remind him to take care of himself? But the truth is, as people age, they often become less motivated to prioritize their physical health. Men can get caught up in the routine of daily life, and physical activity becomes an afterthought. But when a woman sees that her husband isn't putting in the effort to stay healthy and active, it can feel like he's giving up, not just on himself, but on the relationship. This lack of self-care can lead to more than just physical attraction issues. It can also lead to frustration in the relationship. If you're still prioritizing your health, working out, eating well, and maintaining your energy, while your husband is complacent, it can create an imbalance. You may start feeling like you're doing everything to stay vibrant and healthy while he's stagnating. This can make you feel like you're doing the work to keep the relationship alive while he's not. The emotional toll of the dad bod syndrome is more profound than just feeling unattracted to your husband's appearance. It's also about feeling unsupported or even disrespected when he stops taking care of himself. When someone stops trying in the relationship, physically, emotionally, or otherwise, it can cause real tension. The empty nest syndrome is one of the most significant transitions for couples in their later years. It hits when children leave home. For many women, this can feel like both a bittersweet moment of freedom and a moment of loss. When children are young, our lives revolve around them, taking care of their needs, attending their activities, and helping them grow. But once they leave the nest, there's often a void that can be difficult to fill. For many women, especially those who have spent years as primary caregivers, the empty nest phase can trigger an identity crisis. You may have spent decades pouring your energy into being a mother, and now that your children are independent, you might feel like you've lost a part of yourself. When that role is gone, it can bring feelings of loneliness, sadness, and even anxiety about the future. For some women, this can highlight the underlying issues in their relationship with their husband. In the past, the routine of daily life and the presence of children might have kept the couple busy. Now, with the house quieter and emptier, the absence of those distractions can bring old issues to the surface. You may realize that without the children around, your connection with your husband feels strained. Without the shared focus of raising kids, you might suddenly feel that you've drifted apart emotionally. The intimacy and closeness you once had may seem to fade, leaving a sense of dissatisfaction. This period can also make you realize that you haven't been truly engaging with your partner in years. Maybe you've both been so busy with life, work, and raising kids that you forgot how to communicate or connect with each other on a deeper level. The silence after the kids leave home can feel suffocating. The relationship that was once built around shared goals of raising a family now has to find new meaning, and if it doesn't, it can lead to feelings of resentment and emotional distance. The empty nest syndrome can lead to a time of reflection, where you look back at your life, your role in the family, and your relationship with your husband. If there are unresolved issues or unmet needs, they often become more apparent when the distractions of parenting are no longer there to mask them. Unfortunately, if both partners aren't proactive about addressing these changes, it can result in a more distant and unhappy marriage. Unresolved past issues have a way of being swept under the rug, at least temporarily. Over the years, couples accumulate unresolved issues, small disagreements, unmet needs, hurt feelings, and conflicts that never quite got fully addressed. Early on, we might brush things off, thinking it's not a big deal or that we'll deal with it later. But as time goes on, these unresolved issues compound, building a silent wall of resentment between partners. When we're younger, we tend to focus more on the present and future, often putting off dealing with past conflicts. But as we get older, there's more time for reflection, and those buried issues can start to surface. Maybe your husband's way of dealing with stress has always been to shut down emotionally, leaving you feeling alone in your pain. Or perhaps there was a betrayal of trust, something that was never truly forgiven, but both of you moved forward with it hanging over the relationship. As we grow older, we may become less willing to tolerate things we once let slide. The little irritations that we ignored in our younger years now start to feel much bigger, and our patience wears thinner. The pressure of caregiving, managing your own health, and dealing with the challenges of aging only adds to the emotional load, making it harder to ignore old wounds. Without the energy to keep pretending things are fine, the cracks in the relationship become more visible. This is especially true when couples have never learned how to truly communicate about their feelings. If you've never had an open and honest conversation about your frustrations, about what you really need from each other, it becomes difficult to repair the damage. Often, by the time the issues become evident, it's hard to know where to start. What can happen is that these unresolved issues, which may have been buried for years, turn into mountains. When that emotional weight becomes too much to carry, women may start to feel resentful. They might feel unappreciated, unsupported, or unheard, and without resolution, that resentment builds, creating emotional distance between the two partners. It's also important to note that as we get older, we start to question our time. We realize that life is shorter, and we don't want to waste any more time living with unresolved issues. We start thinking, why am I still dealing with this? Why haven't we fixed it? These unaddressed issues feel like a burden, and it's hard to continue pretending everything's okay when it's not. This can lead to frustration, emotional withdrawal, or even the decision to seek change, whether it's through therapy or ultimately reevaluating the relationship. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, like the video if you found it helpful, and leave a comment sharing your experiences with long-term relationships. And as always, check out our newsletter for more genuine advice on living life to the fullest as you age.